Hey Ben,
Hey, Rod, how are
good, good. Wow, looks like you're in a cool den or
you? Yeah,
cave.
yeah, this is my little cave, mate. Yeah. Well, I don't have gold records behind me though. That's pretty impressive.
You know, I almost feel like it's tacky. A
Ah,
lot
never
of
mind,
time,
mate.
a lot of times, like I'll, pull out like a little dinner table and put it somewhere so that these aren't behind me. But this is where my desk is, and it's so comfortable.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So you're bringing the Winger Show to Australia one final time, which is exciting. I see you hitting like Japan and then us and Italy, lots of places.
Yeah.
Have these final shows started yet, or is it about to begin?
Well, yeah, we've done 6 shows this year,
Oh yeah.
four on the mainland, U.S. And then last week we were out on the Monsters of Rock
Oh,
cruise,
cool. Yeah.
which we've done many times. And I'm like, just imagine like a floating city with 3,000 fans
Yeah.
and 40 some odd bands performing at venues all over the ship, like 18 hours a day. It's insane.
Yeah, man. So I've got to ask, how's it feel? Like you got the original members, you're playing these songs for the last time. It's got to be a little strange, right?
It's a mixed bag of feelings, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, throughout these 37 years, all of us have remained good friends
Hmm.
and really good friends. And we still love hanging out. A lot of bands, they meet on stage and then they can barely get along for the concert. And then as soon as the concert's over, they go their separate ways.
Hmm.
You know, we go to meals together. We love hanging out. So obviously, we also really enjoy each other's musical compatibility. So performing is great too. The other side of it, that's that sad melancholy side. Like it's coming to an end. It's been almost 40 years. Um, but perhaps it's time, you know, to
Yeah,
kind
sure.
of say goodbye, go out on a high note, no pun intended. Um, and fortunately, everybody in the band through the years has developed other interesting, avenues of, musical creativity.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like everybody's life. It's, oh my God, what do I do if the band ends? You know? Um, so yeah, it's a mixed bunch of feelings of happiness and I don't want to say sadness, but just, oh, I can't believe this is coming to an end. But all good things must pass, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. So going way back, like you were well and truly a successful drummer when Winger began, right? Like how'd you first get together with Winger?
Yeah, so it's so interesting, right? I'm several years older than everybody, and I had this entirely different career
Hmm.
for a decade before hooking up with them. So, I met the Dixie Dregs in college.
Hmm.
Steve Morse was this amazing guitarist that was constantly being yelled at by the teacher because he didn't sound like every other guitarist doing their jazz kind of lines. He was Steve Morse.
Hmm.
And I was playing piano in the class, and he came over to me one day and he said, "Hey, somebody told me you play the drums. Can you fill in for my drummer? He hurt himself surfing." I really thought I had died and gone to heaven when I went to this rehearsal because they were playing cover versions of Mahavishnu Orchestra songs, the Allman Brothers, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, and then Steve Morse's original compositions.
Hmm.
That was the kind of music that I was just fully wrapped up in back then, when I was 20, 21 years old. And so we got out of college, decided to go for it, whatever that meant. And so I had like 11 years in this um, jazz rock fusion instrumental music world. And then all of us in the Dixie Dregs, we started to show up in the music magazine polls, and it was great. So we were establishing ourselves as performers, as like legitimate. serious performers. So, like most things happen, bands come to an end. There's not that many, U2s and Rolling Stones. And I hadn't prepared for it, right? I thought this is going to be my band until I retire when I'm 80 years old or whatever. But the band ended. We were all still really good friends, but started to see things differently in terms of how a band should run, how should we travel, how much should we tour or not tour. And we said, why don't we go on a temporary hiatus until further notice? So everybody's on their own. So my wife Michelle and I were living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I realized, how do you find the next thing to do in a city that's not New York, LA, or Nashville in the United States? So we were from New York, so we moved back up here, and I started pounding the pavement, not really knowing what to do. Um, I put together a resume and discovered that, resumes don't mean anything in music. It's like people just want to hear you play and see if your look fits the look of what they're doing. So, because I had a name at the time, um, I was able to, you know, get my foot into certain auditions, and I was able to jam with various New York musicians. And one thing led to another, and I met um, a management company. They were a Japanese management company, and their biggest artist in 1986 and 87 was named Kitaro. He was a new age artist. So, wine and cheese, sleepy, pretty music.
Mhm.
And the manager told me, hey, look, Kitaro is coming to the United States from Japan. He's getting ready to do a theater tour for 5 or 6 weeks, and you'd be great for it. So why don't you come to our offices next week? I said, great. So I went to the office the following week, and the manager said, oh, I feel so terrible, but Kitaro flew from Japan to LA, and he just chose all LA based musicians. Do you know the drummer Casey Sherrill? And I said, of course I know Casey Sherrill. He's a great drummer. So he said, he's doing the tour. So there's no Kitaro tour. I'm sorry. So I said, all right, well, thank you very much. Can you just keep me in mind if you ever need a drummer for something else? So he said, sure. So he's letting me out of this big office, and I'm hearing some music coming from one of the other rooms. And he said, oh, let me introduce you to these two musicians who are using our Tascam or TAC reel to reel, 4-track or 8-track. He opens the door, and it's Reb Beach and Kip Winger. Now, I might have heard of Reb because someone, when I moved to New York, might have given me a cassette of some of his instrumental stuff. And I thought, wow, this guy's extremely talented. So it was very funny because Kip had no idea who I was. And Kip has a very, until you know him, his personality can just be very blasé, like, hey, man, how's it going?
Yeah.
So Reb was over the top excited because his, like, just about his favorite band and favorite guitarist at that time were the Dixie Dregs and Steve Morse. So he's saying, Kip, you don't know who this guy is. He's the drummer from the Dixie Dregs. He plays with Steve, blah, blah, blah. And Kip's like, hey, man, look at Rev. He's so excited. And I remember to this day, they were doing the demo for the song Madeleine that a year and a half later or 2 years later was Winger's first single and video. But so I said, look, I've been down in Atlanta, Georgia for the last 11 years playing with the Dixie Dregs, and I'm really looking to get back to my rock roots. I'd love to just hit hard and kind of slam it. And so Kip said, look, there's 30 drummers in New York that go to every cattle call audition, whether it's for a tour or a band looking for a drummer. He said, but Reb is so excited. You want to just get together and jam? I said, sure. So he called me a few days later and we jammed. But before I went in the room, I kind of talked to myself. I said, Rod, don't ruin this opportunity by just playing your fusion kind of drumming. They're a rock band. So just go in there and based on what riff they start playing, just hit as hard as you can, keep it simple. So Kip walks over to me and just starts going. So I did what seemed logical to me, just bass drum, snare. I didn't even play a drum fill. So after 10 or 15 seconds, he stops the jam and he goes, "What are you doing? Rev said you could do all this weird stuff." So I said, "I'm intentionally not doing it because I don't want to, you know, I don't want to like fail the audition or what. So he said, "No, no, no, I see you hit hard. It's great. Just lose me. Let's see what you got." And I said, "I can't believe this. Like, this is awesome." And that's how I got in Winger.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah. And so I went from, like a little over a decade of being in the musician fusion world. Suddenly now I'm in that what they called, the hairband world. And the way to get a record deal back then, and I'm certainly now, is you want to kind of fit in a category. So you need to sort of sound a little bit like Bon Jovi and Kiss and Def Leppard and Motley Crue, but you also want to have some things about your band that separate you from those bands. So, to Kip's credit, the reason he asked me to be a part of it was to add the element of not just a rock drummer to the mix. And he said, look, most of the time the music's going to require just hard hitting basic grooves, but we're definitely going to have these moments where we want you to do things that you don't typically hear in a rock band. And case in point was when we recorded that first album, when we did the song 17, I played it through basic. And then they said, okay, Rod, this time when we record it, after the guitar solo, when that riff is happening, can you do something that's never been heard on a rock record? So I said, all right, I have an idea. You're probably going to hate it. And then I turned the beat around. So the thing's going, right. I delayed the groove by an eighth note.
Hmm.
So instead of going boom, pa, I went boom, pa, just for two measures, just like 4 seconds long. They loved it. That's what's on the record. And to this day, like there've been literally hundreds and hundreds of musicians, in particular drummers, that ask me, what's going on there? What time signature is that in? Why does the bottom drop out? Why is it upside down? It's because rock drummers or rock musicians never have been exposed to some of those concepts that are prevalent in fusion and jazz.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And that first album, Winger, achieved platinum in the US and gold in Japan and Canada. And the second album was massive as well. Like, you guys must have been buzzing, composing, and writing this stuff, right? This hits.
It, it's an indescribable feeling when you see all of the cards lining up.
Mm.
Usually when you're in a band, there's a lot of disappointment. Even when you have a record deal, something goes wrong and the label goes, "Oh, we're so sorry. The timing was wrong. And, we didn't know that such and such a label was releasing Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA. And so everything else got lost in the shuffle. Next time, next time, next time."
Mm.
But with the first Winger record, when MTV picked up that first video to Madeleine, the label at first, I don't think they really thought much about what was going to happen. So they didn't put all their, Atlantic Records muscle into it. But suddenly it's like, whoa, there's all this activity at MTV. They really seem to be pumping Winger. Now let's join the party. And then everything just started lining up. So MTV ruled the roost back then. When MTV played a video, all the radio stations around the country would jump in and start playing it. Then the records start selling. Then all of the headliner bands that are playing the big theaters and arenas, they want the bands that have the buzz going on, because the support bands that will open the shows, they don't have to be paid very much money. They all want to be in that slot, and they're going to help sell the last 1,000 or 2,000 tickets, which will help the headliner make tens of thousands more. And so we were just caught up in that whirlwind where everything fell into place. It's an amazing feeling. But, at the time, we didn't know that when our record came out in the fall, the latter part of 1988, that 2 years later, some unknown new band called Nirvana, followed by Pearl Jam, were going to come out and completely obliterate that hair band era. So we got two albums, that both went well past a million sales and kind of close to 2 million in the United States. But our third album, Pull, which really is still regarded as like one of the strongest albums. Um, it just got caught up in that era where Nirvana and Pearl Jam dominated MTV and the airwaves. But so we had like this 3, 4 year run of just, being, one of the more sought after bands. And then it kind of did this. And then actually, Winger didn't even play a show for about 9 years, from 1993 to 2002. Then, if you have some hits, you're always going to have an audience of sorts. So in 2002, Poison got back together and they were doing a summer tour, and we were invited to be one of the bands on it, along with Cinderella and Faster Pussycat. And so that brought us back together. And then from 2002 till now, at least every other year, if not every year, Winger has been busy playing around the world.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool. And you also play with Kip on his solo stuff as well, yeah? Is that process very different, the way the kind of drum composition comes together and stuff from when you're doing Winger?
It's definitely a different mindset. And yeah, when I think of Kip's solo music, I kind of think of like Peter Gabriel, Seal, who did Higher Love. Give me a higher love. What's his name?
Oh,
This-
yeah. Well, I know what you mean. That's really annoying anyway. Sorry, mate.
but yeah, so like this
Yeah,
this really really sophisticated, well thought out pop slash rock music.
yeah.
And
Steve
so
Winwood
yeah,
is, I think.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
so the approach, it's definitely different,
Mm,
because it's not just slamming, the
mm,
backbeat. Um, and the thing that I pride myself the most with, when I think of my career and the different musicians that I performed with, my goal uh, was always to sound like a credible drummer in that style, rather than having someone say, "What's a jazz drummer doing in a rock band?" or "What's this rock drummer doing, trying to swing?" But I have a background. When I first started taking drum lessons, it was with a big band drummer. And so he taught me how to play swing music and how to read big band charts. And so when I was invited in 1994 to be part of that project that Neil Peart put together with Buddy Rich's daughter, Burning for Buddy, um, even though I hadn't played with a big band since college, it wasn't like when I faced the Buddy Rich big band in the power station or wherever we recorded in New York. It wasn't like I was experiencing a big band for the first time,
Mm,
you know? And so, so like with the Dixie Dregs, it's a different approach because it's instrumental fusion. Winger is more of straight ahead rock, although there are the times like at the end of Headed for a Heartbreak or Rainbow in the Rose where it's like, yeah, do that fusion over the top, polyrhythmic kind of thing.
mm,
But I also played with a jam band called Jazz is Dead, where I replaced Billy Cobham um, in that band, and it was a whole different experience playing the music of the Grateful Dead, where the sky's the limit, wherever you want to take it from night to night. Just don't play it the same as last night.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so it's a whole different concept in the jam band. And then I have a power duo with Jordan Rudess, right from Dream Theater,
Mm,
which that's more like prog instrumental, over the top prog with all kinds of 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2
mm,
1 2.
mm,
So I always try to sound like a credible drummer in that style of music, and not having people say, "Oh my God, this guy shouldn't be doing this.
mm.
He's too this or he's too that."
Yeah, cool. And you also play in the Jelly Jam, yeah, with John from Dream Theater and Tabor. That's a cool sound. How'd you get together? Because it was
Yeah,
Platypus before, right?
right. So I love those guys.
Yeah, cool.
Love working with them, and we've actually done maybe 20 shows live
Mm,
together. I wish we could do more. Um, so John Myung called me. This is around 1999 or 98, and he said, "I'm putting together, a project. Would you like to be part of it?" And Ty Tabor's going to be the guitarist, and Derek Sherinian, who at the time was the keyboardist in Dream Theater.
mm,
So I said, "Of course." So so we did those two Platypus albums, and then we became a trio. Derek left, and we continued on as, like whatever you call this power pop rock
mm.
power trio. I think it's like some of the music that's come out of that band is so powerful, and I just wish more people uh, could be exposed to it.
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
playing live with those guys is out of this world.
Mm, that's cool. And you're also a drum educator, yeah, like a Berkeley College professor. How'd you get into teaching? Like, obviously you
Yeah,
started as a
yeah,
muso, like,
yes. Like everything that's happened in my career has not happened because there was a plan.
mm, yeah,
And I think a lot of people in the music business would say the same thing. It's like right place, right time. A door opens when you're least expecting it, right?
mm,
So, when was it? It was the summer of 1997. Just out of the blue, I got a phone call from the chairman of the percussion department at Berkeley, and he said, "Hey, I heard you have a duo with some keyboardist." Nobody knew who Jordan Rudess was in 1997. And I had met Jordan when in the Dixie Dregs, our keyboardist T. Lavitz was not available for a couple of months. And through a set of circumstances, like we found this unknown phenom named Jordan Rudess. And then he joined the Dregs for like 20 shows or something. We rehearsed for one day, and the first concert was the next day in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We're in the middle of the show, and all of a sudden, Steve Morse's guitar rig and the Dave LaRue's bass and Jerry Goodman's violin, they just stopped working.
mm,
So I look at this guy who I just met the day before. His keyboard went directly into the PA system, right? Everybody else was playing through amps that lost
mm.
their power. So we looked at each other, and instead of stopping, we just kept jamming. And about 5 or 10 minutes went by of just this drummer and keyboardist making this insane music.
Mm,
It was so exciting. So the power came back on. The five musicians finished the drag show. And then backstage, Jordan and I said that was really magical. Like we got to do something together, and that eventually turned into the Rudis Morgenstein project, right? And so that was in 1994, and it was 2.5 years later that the chairman of the Berkeley percussion department called me up and said, "Can I hire you and that keyboard player to do a concert at Berkeley?" We did the concert, and then the chairman called me and said, "Have you ever thought about teaching on a collegiate level?" I said, "No, what do you have in mind?" And then that became 20 years of teaching up in Boston, commuting from my home 240 miles
Mm,
north, right? 400 kilometers,
mm,
and then 400 kilometers home. Um, it lasted 20 years. And then in the midst of that, around 2009, their online division, which is a whole thriving, um, conservatory, they said, "Hey, we'd like you to create a course in rock drumming, a 3 credit college course. Would you do that?" So I spent a year um, putting together this 12-week course called Rock Drums, which I continue to teach. It's very easy to teach an online course. Most of the time, the students are just left to their own, abilities
mm.
to read through the material, do all the listening, submit assignments and other things. And then I grade the assignments by watching their videos. And then once a week, there's a 1 hour hang for whoever can make it. And so it's very funny that I'm even talking about this now because yesterday when I did the class, I had to figure out for the next 2 weeks of lessons. Next week I'll be in Japan. All right, how do we figure this out? So Japan will be 13 hours ahead of where I am now. And so when are you available? And then the week after that, I'll be in Australia, which is 15 hours
Yeah.
ahead. So anyway, so the educational side of my life and career has been a huge part of it.
Mm, yeah,
And
that's
and
cool.
I've written, a couple of drum books that I'm really proud of. One is called The Drum Set Musician, which is like a beginning intermediate book that has a lot of play along tracks. And then the other book, which I'm really proud of, is called Drum Set Warm Ups. It's too long a story to tell, but I think it's the first and only of its kind drum set warm up book. Every other musical instrument has hundreds of books of scales and arpeggios. But what do drummers do? They sit at their drum pad and they play rudiments and then they sit down at the drums and just start jamming. They don't do the drum set equivalent of scales and arpeggios. So this book, Drum Set Warm-Ups, is filled with what would be scales and arpeggios, not beats and fills. It's a whole other concept with the greater purpose of increasing one's prowess around the drum set by forcing the body to go in directions that it doesn't normally do.
That's cool. Yeah,
But yeah,
nice one, man. So yeah, April's almost upon us, and Winger will arrive in Australia with like 7 albums worth of songs to play. How do you go about choosing a set list? That's a tricky task, I
yeah,
think, you know?
it is tricky.
Yeah.
Tricky. So, our feeling is the majority of people want to hear the hits. So even though we might be tired of playing all of them, it's only fair that if somebody's going, to the trouble of coming to the concert and everything that's involved with that, we got to give them what they want. And so all the songs that were radio hits and video hits, almost all of them are always part of the show, as are some of the songs that are our favorites to perform.
Hmm.
And then we try to represent something from almost every album.
Yeah, cool. Good to hear, man.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, fingers crossed we hear Heaven's Falling off Seven, man. I like that one. Yeah. Cool.
Oh
Look,
yeah.
yeah.
I wish we could do that when we've
Yeah,
never.
yeah.
We've
There
never
you
played
go.
that one. That's a
Yeah.
great song, right?
It is, yeah, it's a solid one. Yeah. Anyway, look, Rod, thanks heaps for your time. I better let you go to the next one of these, man. But it's been great to chat. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys.
Yeah, same here, Ben. I look forward to meeting you, right? In
Cool.
person.
Yeah, man. Cheers. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye now.
Yeah.